Welcome back to the pre-press print 7577 at Fullerton College. This is Ben Hewitt, your professor. We are looking at PIA's pre-press trainees handbook part 2.5, page layout software, in hopefully video 2 of what is hopefully only 2 videos. We are looking at a dialog box from Quark Express showing you the image use. There's a similar panel that shows up in InDesign that we actually do use since we're playing more with InDesign. But this is just a list of every single linked file that is used in the document that you're creating, and every single linked file tells you what page it's on, what type you're looking at, and what the status is. What page in the document, you see there's a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 going on down there. You can see that there's JPEGs, PDFs, EPSs, TIFFs, all those things, and you can use this to navigate to any one of those pictures to look at them where they live inside the document. InDesign, you do the same thing. InDesign does have a possibility to embed a graphic, but friends don't let friends embed. Embedding bloats your file to the point where it's just not going to work. It'll start crashing computers and wrecking systems a little bit, or at least, at the very, very least, slowing down the output process. Linking files is a much more reliable, efficient way to do it. So long as your file management is in place, it is the better way to do this, because there's no reason that you need to waste your computer's thinking time to remember every detail of every picture inside it. So long as it knows where it goes and how big to make it when it outputs, that is the better way to do it. Don't embed. Microsoft Word's embeds. Do you want to be like Microsoft Word? That wasn't rhetorical. You're all supposed to shout no right then. Make your friends, neighbors, roommates, family members all wonder why you're yelling no loudly at your computer from your room. I'm just going to pretend you did that because it makes my day better. Anyways, linking graphics in there. You can also take a linked file that's been linked and tell it to embed, but please don't. Promise me you won't. Don't do this. It's not nice. It's one thing to have images embedded on a school report that's 5 or 6 pages long in Microsoft Word. But when you start working with actual live client jobs, the length of these things can get quite lengthy, for lack of a better word. That was a silly and extreme example, but it's also a real fair warning. That restoration hardware catalog, yeah, it was like a few years ago now, but that catalog with 3,300 pages, and you guys know what goes in catalogs, right? Is it just a brief text description in black and white text? And when it's something like restoration hardware, which sells really luxury goods are always shot in excruciatingly good detail and oftentimes printed at higher resolution than normal print jobs, because if you're selling things like jewelry and watches and other finery, like properly remade historical hardware for making your historical house that you bought look just right, because you live in that nice neighborhood in Pasadena that I never got to live in, with the houses from railroad barons in the 1890s and all that good stuff. And you wanted that perfect redone knob to make your house feel like you're living in the freaking Gamble house. Then, yeah, you want a very high quality photograph of that doorknob and every other doorknob in there too, so you can pick the right one down to the smallest detail. I am just simply establishing the fact that this is going to be a catalog of an unbelievable amount of images, and if they're all high quality, that is a lot of computer memory taken. Even with a good modern computer, you do not want thousands of pages of photos actually embedded into your file. You will spend all day trying to process that and output it for the press. So do yourself and everyone else a favor and forget I said anything about embedding linked graphics. That is, unless you're taking a test that asks about it. Here's the links panel, similar to the panel in Quark Express. I'll show you this in our demo video later in actual InDesign. This is where you can find all the links, and it tells you if the link is working or not, and it can actually tell you a lot about the different pictures and outside graphics that you've brought in. I'm not going to say imported because importing kind of implies embedding, but you've linked to, you've placed, you've included in your layout. Working with graphic elements, you can also create some basic graphic elements. Let me say that again slower. Some basic graphic elements. There is a pen tool. There are Pathfinder tools. There are shape tools. You can draw boxes and shapes and fill them in with colors and gradients and tints and all sorts of fun things and patterns. But sometimes you want to, for anything really even sort of complicated, it's better to create these graphics in Illustrator and then link them over here. It will be better. This is not a vector drawing program. It has some limited capability that lets you play with it a little bit. Let me give you some examples, and I guess I'll have to show you this on the InDesign side, the things you might want to do with this. Okay, couldn't resist actually sharing some samples here inside the lecture, though there will still be a demo video coming later on this. So here's an example of the type of graphics you can do in InDesign and the graphics that it's really meant to handle. I have a super cool picture of some F-18s in an aircraft carrier about to be loaded with some munitions. And I have some placeholder text, which could be some sort of cool text that's somehow related to this, or maybe not related at all. You never know with textbooks. You could have a cool picture like this and then some sort of boring math book thing on it. Anyways, of course, math makes this all possible, blah, blah, blah. So you can't read black text over this. And I have another thing coming for you on that one as well. So here's text on top of a picture. There's not enough contrast to see it, so we have to create contrast. There's a couple ways of doing this sort of thing, and I'll show you using here in InDesign. If you take the rectangle tool, we can draw a rectangle behind it all this, just a little bit bigger than the text boxes. We can then make this rectangle have a fill of paper. We haven't talked about this much in this class yet, but InDesign doesn't do white. InDesign says, wait a minute, you guys are all printers. We all know that white doesn't actually exist unless you're creating a spot color. The only white you're getting is the color of the paper, and we can't guarantee that that's going to be white. So if you're printing on weird pink paper, this will still show up as the paper color, because for a printer, there is no white. There is only parts that you don't print. Anyways, I'm off my soapbox. So I have this white box on top of everything. I am going to reduce the opacity, and then I use keyboard shortcuts. I think it's object, transform, arrange, object, arrange, send backward. But you can see it's also command brackets. So I'm just going to command bracket this thing, command left bracket to send it behind. Now, if I do the preview, you can see this is a little bit more legible. In fact, I might go back and bump this opacity up a little bit more so you can still see the picture behind it. But now you have a cool thing on top. Not cool. You can still see the picture through there, but this lets you then read with enough. Sorry, I'm like half stuttering my way through this thing. You want to have enough contrast. The contrast between text and not text needs to be greater than the contrast of the image that it's on top of. Otherwise, you have camouflage. So we generally look at light to dark contrast, and that's what we're looking for when we read. It's how we recognize the shapes of things and the shapes of letters and words. So again, the contrast between word and not word needs to be greater than the contrast in the background. Otherwise, as you saw in the beginning of this, it's not legible. This could also, by the way, go the other direction. Let me go ahead and show you this one because it's kind of fun. Make it a dark box, make the text paper, and that's the other direction of the exact same thing. Let's just have a little fun with this, make that yellow or red, and it looks kind of you know, industrial, military, aircraft carrier-y to do this sort of thing. You can do it with any color you want, but black and white are good ones to do because it kind of fades it out and makes it easier to read. Because again, black and white is what we want to read in. Strong light to dark contrast, stark borders. Anyways, so this is it. This is the kind of things you can use these graphics for. Let me go ahead and make this one step crazier because, you know, sometimes you just have to. I'll draw a new box around the word header. I'm going to make that redder. See what I did there with the rhyming? Cancel. There we go. Send that to the back, bring it up one, throw this into white text, and you have even more of a cool thing done here. This is the sort of work you could do. And if you wanted to be crazy, you know, there's always gradients you can throw it on this stuff. One of my favorite tools in InDesign, now I'm going off on a tangent here, and this is harder to do in other things, and a gradient that I actually do use is the gradient feather tool. What this does is take whatever you have and gradually fade it away. Of course, in this picture, that's a problem because it fades away right when you really need it. But that's a cool tool. You can do it to the picture too, by the way. If you want to say, you know what, have the picture fade out, you can do that. I use this a lot as a way of but not nearly this dramatically, as a way of subtly giving myself the contrast necessary to be able to read something. Okay, let's jump back to the regular part of the lecture. Back here in the PIA lecture, we're looking at working with text. This is stuff you guys have already done with our common sense / whatever other text pamphlet you wanted to create. We've already looked at character formatting, paragraph formatting, styles that lets you quickly make a change to everything, bringing in formatted text files from other places we didn't quite do, but you can. You can maintain other people's formatting. Sometimes you do that for clients, but if you're doing the typesetting, you really don't want other formatting. You want to control the formatting. That's your job. That's what we're here for. PDF creation. You can make PDFs from both of these. Both Quark and InDesign do a great job of exporting and creating PDFs for output. PDF is the leading industry way of getting things onto press nowadays. We don't make PostScript like we used to. We make PDFs, and the RIPs and the the plate making softwares and all those automation engines, they all run on PDF now. They use those to create the output. So giving them a PDF is the right thing to do. Both of these have very robust, very good systems. Here they are side by side. As far as you, the user, will be seeing them, they look almost identical. Although there is one big difference between these, and that won't really matter till next semester or last semester if you were with me last time, which is the question of PostScript conversion or not. InDesign, being made by the same people who designed the PDF and invented it, has kind of backdoor access to PDF creation and is able to directly generate a PDF using the InDesign coding and language built into it. Quark Express has to basically do a file print and then save the output file of PostScript as a PDF. This makes a difference in graphical qualities of vector objects and some transparency effects. But we'll get into that much, much later. Just know that InDesign does this a little bit better. There are really only two options, really these days only one. InDesign has taken over the whole everything of everything. InDesign is the way to do this in industry. But just like in Snowpiercer, where you're assuming that eggs and bullets are extinct, sometimes you think things that you think are gone from this world are in fact still living in some hidden crack, in some backwards print shop somewhere, and suddenly you're working with a file that has a .qxp, and you got to figure that one out. So Quark Express is not gone. Quark Express and InDesign are both equally good in their output. The thing that InDesign has done to make it better and make people like it is user interface. When I was a kid, my dad taught me how to use Quark Express, and I'm currently looking up the statute of limitations because that is child abuse. You should not do that to a kid. While everyone else was typing up their school papers in Word and other notepad things and or still handwriting them, here I was having to learn how to drive Quark Express, which was unbelievably complicated, and it makes you just a little bit neurotic once you learn how to use it. Anyways, that's not supposed to be libelous. It is a good system. It's a little bit of a headache because it was the first. No one yet had ideas of usability and user interface issues that can make things more palatable to the person behind the keyboard. So things learned by creating Quark Express were implemented into InDesign. And who knows, maybe the latest quarks are a bit more fun.